Yeah, it's interesting within the context of canon because they made a lot of reactionary films. I mean, they made all the Death Wish sequels. That's all you need to know.
Oh,
yeah.
damn.
So this is part of the canon film group's, litany of, anti-communist and sort of right-wing meathead propaganda films of the time. And like I said, Joe Zito directs it. I think he, I don't know his politics. I kind of wonder about them, but he knows how to make an entertaining meathead movie. I'll give him that.
Welcome to The Empire Never Ended with Boris, Fritz, and wait a minute, J.G. Michael from Parallax Views. How did you get here? You're not Ray. What is happening here?
I hope I'm a suitable replacement this time.
Wow.
Well, for the record, Ray was also supposed to be on this episode, but he had some technical problems, so unfortunately, he won't be joining us as well.
You say unfortunately,
but we got J.G. Michael, so it's perfect.
Oh, it's nice to have new friends in the compound under here, and I didn't get to meet you when you invited Boris and Ray onto your show to talk about the O9A. Not that I know anything about the O9A. I mean, I understand, but it was.
It's awkward with three. Okay,
here we are. Here we are.
Well, and we've met finally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Parallax Views is obviously it's a great show. You're one of the hardest working podcasters out there. I don't know how you do it. You push out a lot of stuff and a lot of interviews, which takes
I'm
a
all
lot
over
of preparation. And I think I don't know, like I really like all the film stuff that you do because I feel like we come from a kind of similar place in like horror fandom, particularly where like I know you've covered films like Black Christmas, which I really love, and many others, and so I was like, we do a lot of these kind of trashy cinema episodes when we can, and I like to. And so when Fritz suggested doing this more anti-communist films, it's like, let's get JG on here. Let's see what I can do.
This is the second podcast I've done. The first was with This Is Revolution. The second one I've done in like 2 months on a Chuck Norris movie. And it's torture because I do not like Chuck Norris, aka Walker Texas Corpse, aka that dude has no emotion to show. He's but I do love I do love a good canon movie.
Hold on here. Listen, somebody didn't grow up in North Texas at a very key time in the 90s when Chuck Norris acted exactly like everybody's dads acted. I didn't know that was an emotionless, like, bad acting. I thought that was just a man. A man with a couple of boots with some poor minority guy's blood on the bottom of them. I never asked questions.
Yeah.
And then I have to say, though, when I did look up who the Texas Rangers actually were, as a young man, I was pretty shocked. It's like finding out Santa Claus was really racist and killed people.
No, I'm with you, JG. I'm not a big Chuck Norris fan either, to be honest.
Well,
so somebody else has to come and slog through this this flick with us.
The two guys who know about film hate Chuck Norris. Big shock.
Okay. But we like horror films.
Yeah. This is a horror film too. Good God, it's awesome.
There are some elements I think that shine
gore.
through, but we'll get there. I mean, yeah. I guess Fritz, you should probably lead us in here. Tell us why we're talking about this and what the fuck we're talking about.
Well, this came out of the same tub that I found that U.S.A. Goes to Hawaii film with our old what's his name?
John Wayne?
John Wayne.
Oh, you covered Jim Big McLean.
Yes.
Gotta come over more often to the compound. We are always watching this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were familiar, I see.
Indeed.
You were on the right show. Yeah, we did. Well, from that. So basically, I pulled that out of a report that the American Legion had sent to the FBI, commenting on how the feds should somehow really support these films somehow. And then later, that carried on into them saying similar things about Red Dawn, which I realized I hadn't ever really bothered to look up. I just, it's out there. I knew about it. I saw it, but I never really thought about it. And so when I was digging through there, I found out that it grew out of a film duology. No, they're not. It's a film franchise. I don't know what you call this. You're the guys at the film students. The titles, when you have this title of the same title, two different movies, many different decades.
I guess franchise, yeah.
Franchise, all right. Called Invasion U.S.A. And this purported to be the original Red Dawn. And so on top of that, I found out that whole kind of Red Dawn, Soviets inside the U.S. secretly plotting to coup the state and take over and enslave all the capitalists and whatever.
Throw the Bible in the trash and do all the other stuff.
There was a bad thing they did too, though. I can't think of what it was. There wasn't just good stuff like that. There was some bad stuff too. But all that stuff, that comes from a comic book written in 1947 called Is This Tomorrow? And that's not a question. Look at the cover of this thing. It's Is This Tomorrow? No punctuation. And it was illustrated by none other than Charles M. Schulz, the Minneapolis creator of Peanuts, Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and all of that. But in this comic, you got people eating their horses and getting shot a lot and blowing up kids and stuff. So, knowing that, I figured we'd do a big ol' episode about that theme, focusing on the greatest of all versions of this theme, perhaps, maybe excluding Red Dawn, I don't know, but that would be the 1985 version of Invasion U.S.A., starring and co-written by Chuck Norris, and also co-produced by his brother, Aaron?
I think
co-directed.
So Aaron Norris co-wrote the story, and then Chuck Norris got like a screenplay credit. I think there's multiple writers.
Somebody wrote this story. Yeah, crazy. And it all goes back to this thing put out by the American Catholic Church. This Is This Tomorrow comic. So we're just gonna kind of draw a line through that, but really we're gonna focus on old Chuck Norris there. Well, not Chuck Norris, but
I just looked it up, by the way. There's 3 writers on this one. It's Chuck Norris and James Brunner for the screenplay, and then it says story by Aaron Norris and James Brunner. So I guess Chuck had to spruce up the screenplay from the original story.
Well, I'm sure he added in some of his action scenes and lines.
So I'm trying to look up the name of the publisher of this comic, and it's escaping me. It's on the Wikipedia. Sorry, let me pull that up.
It is the American Catholic something or rather.
Or Cataclimactic Comic Association. That's not it either. All right, so it was published by the Catholic Catechetical
You're the Catholic here.
Catechetical. That can't be right. Catechetical. Yes, that's correct. It's by the Catholic Catechetical Guild Educational Society of St. Paul, Minnesota in 1947. I said it. I got it out.
I think the general. So I read through it, and it's a good little anti-communist comic. It's got all the fun stuff, and it definitely sets the genre for a lot of these kind of anti-communist Red Scare media to come.
In gore as well.
Yeah, there's some gore, and there's some there's some pretty disturbing moments. But basically, the gist of it is that the enemy, that there's like a kind of fifth column inside, that the communists are able to infiltrate and subvert like every facet of American life
by causing emergencies, basically.
And, by causing chaos and
riots.
Yeah, so like in the unions, they're the ones that are the loudest agitators. They stir racial hatred because they want to destroy America. They don't respect the sanctity of life and, promote abortion. Obviously, this is a Catholic thing after all. And
was it abortion? I think it was euthanasia.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
same difference.
I don't even think they weren't even on it yet, really.
You got this up on screen for the little highlight reel.
Yeah. It's not that complex of a story, like Boris said. But it is really funny because it's also a list of sort of everything that capital and intelligence agencies have done to everybody all around the world and in the U.S. For a while. But keep in mind, this was written in 1947, so like. I don't know. It's pretty 1950s, I would say. It's pretty advanced in its understanding of how to gladio a place because that's sort of what it's about. And what to say about it beyond that, except that Snoopy's not in it once, but there is a guy that looks a little bit like Snoopy at the very beginning that I have him up right now. Can you guys see the picture there?
Uh-huh.
And clearly
that looks like Snoopy to you?
A little bit. You don't see it? Look at the eyes are kind of, wide set. He's got that little snout and he's, black and white spotted.
Yeah.
You tell me a more Snoopy looking guy. This is what Snoopy and Charlie Brown's kid would look like after like 70 years of drinking, I think.
Okay, fair. I'll take it.
Maybe not 70. That's a hard 40 at most. But he does say, this is one of the early communists that you get introduced to, which is also a theme we're going to see in both of these films. Obviously, the introduction of the villain and the tendency of the villain to just tell you exactly what it is they're doing. You know the thing. And this guy on one panel tells us that we have done an exceptional job of making different classes and religions hate each other. Snoopy, say it ain't so. But this goes on, and they will show us examples of this. They show us labor against capital, and there's like a street fight going on. People chanting, "Capitalism is to blame. Down with the capitalists." As a capitalist, weird to identify oneself so obviously that way, but look at him. He's sitting, he's wearing like a Monopoly Man suit, green. He's looks a bit like Teddy Roosevelt at the end, maybe. And
he's got like a Jeeves like manservant.
Neil Jeeves manservant, exactly. And there's these guys saying, "String him up, capitalist." And then I think the next scene is the capitalist hanging from a lamppost. There you go.
Oh yeah.
On the river, on the street, and it says, believe this, guys, lynching became common. For the first time in America, lynching became common when the communists started to take over secretly. And who did they lynch? But the Monopoly Man. Can you imagine? Flood of intolerant pamphlets hit the streets about Catholics hiding guns and stuff and taking over. And then it shows the scene. Let's see, this is a guy speaking. He's a communist plant saying, "We white Americans have to stand together against the Jews or they'll be running the country." And then you see these black people at a carnival, and there are a couple communist agents behind them saying, "Start something with those two Negroes. My men will do the rest." And then, of course, they throw a rock and start a fight, and it turns into a big race riot in which, and this might be familiar to those fans of the Chuck Norris movie that we are going to talk about, but there is a scene where there is sort of a staged attack that begins a small riot against cops, and it becomes like, how it goes. We also get these amazing massacre scenes of like the entire military establishment in the U.S. being gunned down in the planning room. And then they like literally, somehow it works in this comic logically that when you kill all these officers, as long as you wear their uniforms, you are essentially, the state is required to identify you as that officer that once wore that uniform, because they kill them all, take their uniforms, and say, replace these officers with our own men. It's that easy, folks. Catholic churches getting bombed because the handsome Superman that's preaching inside says that people are being fooled by the communists, and that's pretty much the gist there. But apart from that, you get some pretty cool scenes of a dude getting whipped at a factory by communists, of course. Communism being taught in the schools. "I defy anyone to prove that there's such a thing as a God." That's a lot to ask an 8-year-old, that's for sure. And then even in the grade schools, a teacher says, remember, you are supposed to obey the state, not your parents. Of course, longtime listeners of this show will remember the other anti-communist propaganda films that we watched that literally made heroes out of the children who turned their parents into the House Un-American Activities Commission. So that's fun. That's when Ray realized that 1950s America was Stalinist, but in a very different form, a different mode, you might say. So yeah, that's more or less that comic. There is one other scene I think that stands out, kind of reminiscent of like the Haymarket affair, actually, where there's a sort of a political rally going on. Some kids are in the audience, and some dastardly pinko commie scum shows a grenade and tosses it into the crowd with the kids, blowing everybody up. It wasn't a rocket-propelled grenade, but if you're a fan of those, you just wait till we get to the 80s.
Yeah.
Glorious time. Yes. Duels and everything. It's very honorable.
So this comic was done by Catholics?
It was done by Minneapolis Catholics, including Chaz Schulz.
I was going to say, this is like the Catholic right-wing version of a Jack Chick comic.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, that communist at the beginning, that you said looked like Snoopy. I'm like, if they just replaced him with, like, a guy in an A-cat, like the Pope, it would be a Jack Chick,
Yeah.
That's really there's
another
point.
There's another frame that that we were laughing at earlier, which is just perfect, like, chick track stuff, where it's like, and then they threw the Bible in the fire or something like that. God. And they're all just like, they're all like, yeah, hate, fuck God or whatever. Well, they don't say fuck, but
they say hate, fuck God. Boris,
like we hate God or something. And
the other thing I was reminded of while looking at these panels that you're showing is, you guys ever seen the movie? No, I'm not trying to go off into a digression, but have you guys ever seen the movie If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do?
No, but it's funny you should mention horses, but go on.
So it's a movie made by Ron Ormond with the Reverend Eustace W. Perkle. These were movies that were like, Ron Ormond made all these evangelical films back in like the 60s and 70s. He used to be involved in like the burlesque, community and whatnot, and making burlesque cutie films. But then he becomes like an exploitation filmmaker doing films for evangelical right-wingers. And these movies ended up being shown in a lot of Sunday schools. But the most famous one is If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? And if you know the band Negative Land, the song Christianity is Stupid samples from If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? And it's a movie in which the Reverend Eustace W. Perkle tells you about what will happen if the communists take over. And there's a bunch of assorted scenes of different Southerners putting on bad Russian accents and pretending to be Soviets to take over the U.S. Awesome. But there's one scene in particular that's hilarious where, the communists have taken over the schools and they go and they tell the kids, you do not worship Jesus, you must worship Fidel Castro. Nice. And then they entice the kids to worship Fidel Castro by giving them candy. And then when they give them the candy, they say, see, God didn't give you candy, Fidel did.
That's a fucking good point, though. Like, God didn't fucking give you a fucking education either, Who did that? God damn.
I mean, God gives you tasteless ass wafers or whatever.
Yeah. It's crazy how all the anti-communist propaganda is like so. I mean, it all blends together. It's all sort of the same. Like from that period in what? This is from the 40s?
47.
Yeah, and the stuff from the 70s is exactly the same as stuff from the 40s.
Yeah. And then when we get to like the late 80s, like when we get to Chuck Norris and the film Invasion of USA that we'll talk about today, it's already ridiculous to kind of have the communist threat. So it became more like amorphous because that movie comes out in like 86 or whatever. Yeah. And so then it's kind of, they're communists, but maybe not. But it's still exactly like, everything that we just, all those like panels that you just showed us, like the church bombing, all that stuff happens in the Chuck Norris film. Yeah. It's just, it maybe not the Soviets this time, but it's some kind of other amorphous communists.
Yeah. In the beginning here, it's also, we're going to see in the first film, that we're going to talk about very briefly, but they're definitely identified as the communists. It's very clear in that film, but it's not clear which communists they are, which is also something you get in the later Invasion USA. But yeah. So when was that? That was the 70s? Those films you said?
Yeah, Footman Tire You was the 70s, yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait. They sound pretty great. All right. Well, should we jump into the original then? Invasion USA, that was made only 5 years after this comic. Again, it's not like this isn't a direct line. This is more like a genealogy, I guess. Like they're related. You know, one thing connects to the next. So this next one is the 1952 film, for which I've done some work on. I went through and I edited this already fairly short film. It's about an hour and 19 minutes or something like that, and done in 1952. And the film is completely full of stock footage. It's really mostly stock footage. You feel that way, rather, that's mostly stock footage, until you sit down to edit out all the stock footage to find clips, and you discover that it was only 20 minutes of stock footage. But then you realize that's like 15% of the film, and probably a good target would be like 1%. So that's quite a lot of stock footage. So the film does feel eternal sometimes when you're watching this, as a lot of these shitty anti-communist films do. But
that being said, I actually found that aspect of it to be more interesting than in some ways than the actual like acted parts, because it was a good like exercise in editing.
Okay, but
because it's like a mixture of like World War II footage with like, you know, atom bombs. It has kind of like a little bit of like a Atomic Cafe kind of vibe if you were to just like, cut out, you know, all the acted scenes.
Yeah, but you know, you're also you've played some Hearts of Iron. You do strategy gaming. I do D&D, which is why I was so happy to find out that this movie also has a fucking wizard in it. There's a wizard in the movie. There's a wizard who explains to America why they've got to toughen their asses up and suck it up and nationalize all industries, interestingly enough, so that they can face off the incoming communist threat. It's a very, very fucking awesome, very weird, very bad movie, but it's really like the fever dream of like anti-communism in the Cold War. It's what everyone's dreams probably looked like when they closed their eyes in 1952.
And interestingly enough, it was a commercial success too.
Oh yeah. So was this comic, by the way. I didn't mention that, but like something like 75 million copies were sold. Not to say given away, which is many, many more because it was the church, you know?
And I mean, I think it has that the stock footage war stuff probably did appeal to like, you know, the young kids audience. You know, there's just a lot of cool planes on fire and crashing and stuff, which is fun to watch. But interestingly, just a real side note before we get into it, one of the producers is a guy by the name of Albert Zugsmith, which I'm not sure, JG, if you've ever heard of him. Best known for kind of exploitation films from like back in the 50s. And then later on in 1960, he wrote and produced and directed, and I think maybe even wrote Sex Kittens Go to College, which I don't know if you've seen that, but that's an extremely fun film. It has like
I know Sex Kittens Go to College. Mammy Van Doren, Tuesday Weld. Vampira. It has like a big role in it.
Yeah. So this was kind of his breakout in some way from like his more B films in the 50s. Since Invasion USA was a pretty like, you know, financially successful film, it kind of propelled him into bigger things. Which is kind of fun side.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing that I found out about Zugsmith is that his sister was a relatively celebrated like proletarian author, like a socialist fiction writer.
That's crazy.
So he's like best known for his exploitation films and like a big anti-communist film in the 50s. And I don't know, sibling rivalry maybe? I don't know what's going on there.
Well, look, I mean, the co-writer of this film was Franz Schulz, and not related to Charles M. Schulz, although that is a funny coincidence, isn't it? There's a couple of them in here. And and I looked him up, and he's very interesting. Franz Schulz was this Jewish writer from Austria whose sister was married to Hungarian constructivist painter Moholy Nagy. I don't know if anybody's familiar with him, but I mean that is also kind of like tend to be more socialist circles and stuff like that. And he also, according to his story, was working in Berlin up until 1933 when he was forced out for obvious reasons. And that's when he started his career.
I guess this is the time to prove you're not a communist in Hollywood. So I guess putting your name on some productions like this probably wasn't a bad idea, career-wise.
Yes. All right, so the basic premise of this film, Invasion USA, 1952, is that this it's a bunch of guys at a bar on the precipice of the end of humanity. Although they don't, the end of America anyway, which is pretty much the same thing if you ask old Ed Mulberry, cattle farmer from Arizona, here in the bar, or George Sylvester, not Viereck, San Francisco businessman, or even Carla, who is just kind of a bit of a hussy, I guess, is her thing. She doesn't really seem to have
She's
positions.
just a love interest. She doesn't really have positions.
And there's a politician in there, and there's just a bunch of other dudes in there. There's a bartender named Tim, who is some immortal gremlin who appears at every war to tend bar. He says so at some point in the film. They ask him,
Tim, you're a character. What are you going to do now that there's a war on?
Same thing I did in the last couple of wars. Shake daiquiris.
so I think he's, we thought he was immortal till he died. But anyway, I'm going to spoil everything here. We're trying to get to the Chuck. So we gotta get through the gristle. Oh,
I think it's okay to spoil a 1952 anti-communist movie to our audience if they really want to.
Yeah, you don't think they're gonna be? Yeah.
Plus, we spoil all the films anyway. I don't think we ever give spoiler warnings. It's just bad form.
Well, we spoil them by calling them all fascist, which nobody likes to hear.
Then they'll watch it anyway.
Well, yeah. All right, so here's how I'm going to start it off. Basically, this TV anchor / reporter is going through the bar asking everybody what they think about the draft.
Are you for or against the universal draft? Now, by that I mean draft everything. Soldiers for the army, factories for war work, labor for factories, the whole business.
Nobody likes it. They don't want to draft their industries. They think they already pay too much taxes. They don't want to get involved in Europe. It's a European problem. They're talking about the imminent communist invasion that they all feel is coming, but nobody's taking very seriously. We even see the San Francisco business guy tell off some army general, tell him to get out of his fucking factory, and the army general is like, very Chuck Norris sort of emotivity, says that he'll be sorry about it. Although much like Chuck Norris in his version of Invasion USA, almost nobody gets kicked, which is a criticism I have for both films, but especially the next one. But anyway, I'm trying to find the hypnotist here. So that's a bit of a spoiler. There's a fucking hypnotist in the bar. There's a wizard in the bar. And he's sitting there swirling a cognac in his cognac thing.
But wars are not won by making jokes. To win a war, a nation must concentrate.
Swirls the bulbous glass that they use, and everybody stares at the glass until they sort of are shocked out of their stupor by the TV coming back on because the bartender, Tim, yells,
"What's that guy yakking about? Something big going on. Speak up, jerk."
And then clips on the TV.
No longer a rumor. The blue alert is on.
Turns out Soviets have invaded, and they're doing conventional warfare. They're doing like crazy large aerial attacks. It's also they also really take pains to illustrate that this attack is similar to like a Mongol invasion, an orcish horde. Like they're throwing bodies at the front line until some planes get through, and they end up like, attacking many parts of the U.S., which causes each of these characters, who is all admitted to some sort of sin against the country, like slothfulness, selfishness, etc., each one of them now leaves this bar and invites their own doom upon themselves, one after the other, in this sort of Dante's Inferno like tale where like the fucking cattle rancher guy gets drowned by the Boulder Dam, by Hoover Dam. the San Francisco businessman that didn't want to make tanks for the U.S. military, this is the best part, gets
That's the best
taken
one.
over by the guy that was fucking washing his windows in the first scene we saw with him.
The immigrant worker takes over the factory and executes him.
Executes everybody. Fantastic.
Up with hands, up!
You are here. Just in time. I'm in charge here now. You were right. Your men will work a 24-hour shift until the tanks are repaired. But it is the People's Army who will use them.
And then finally, let's see, Cattle Rancher, his whole family drowns actually in this very hilarious scene. And the Lovebirds, who the whole time are like turning off radios. Everybody in this movie is constantly turning off the radio because they don't want to know. They don't want to hear about it. And that's why they all have to die.
You know, it's funny, the world's coming to an end and you and I are sitting here having dinner. What's more, I was hungry.
Know what you mean. Every once in a while, I forget what's happening in the world. I feel good. As if I just met a new beau.
You have. War or no war, people have to eat and drink and make love.
News bulletin.
Also very, maybe this is a little bit of an omen for the horror film direction that this franchise takes to come. I mean, you each have, each of these kids makes their sin and each of them suffers for it. But of course, the communist invasion here is the monster.
The People's Government of America will take the wealth from the greedy, the speculators, and the capitalistic bourgeoisie, and distribute it among the workers, whose labor will never again be exploited for the benefit of the warmongers of Wall Street. The People's Government brings the citizens of New York a new freedom, a freedom based on order, a freedom based on loyalty to the leaders of the party, your party, which will work hand in hand with the Marxist democratic leadership of all other nations, so that never again will war be necessary among the civilized peoples of the world.
And finally, the lovers who have turned off the radio so many times they're barely aware that New York is getting attacked. They get executed also by these two like drunken kind of
literally like
archetypes.
The archetype, the like Nazi propaganda poster of like the Asiatic Soviet hordes, like
giant guy, small white
looming
woman
over like a white woman.
Her like fucking shoulder exposed from her dress because it's been torn. Like that fucking Nazi propaganda poster was in this movie for a minute before she leaps out the window. A la Birth of a Nation, to avoid being defiled by the good dirty communists. And of course, luckily, it all ends with them coming to their senses again in the bar. Nothing had happened at all. None of these idiots died. Instead, this guy was a hypnotist. And they say it. They tell him.
Well, yeah, he's some kind of a fortune teller. Hypnotizes people, he says. Tells them what's going to happen.
And the guy whose name, the hypnotist, the wizard, his name is Omen. I don't know if you caught that, but they're just really fucking punching you right in the nose on that one. So Omen tells them,
tomorrow springs from today like water from a rock. If you want to change what you will become, first change what you are. That goes for everybody. That goes for everybody. Good day, everybody.
But really, the most catching parts of the film were, like the violent war footage and the odd kind of gruesome end. As each of these, it's Final Destination. It's an anti-communist Final Destination, is what it is. But it ends like Lost. So fuck
it. That's pretty much it. Because again, once you edit out all the war footage, it is only about like a 20-minute movie.
Well, okay, no, it was like, let's be fair to the movie. It was like 20 minutes of war footage, but that's a crazy amount of fucking stock footage for a film that's this long. I mean, it's not like fucking Patton or something. It's not like a 3-hour film. It's an hour and 15-minute film. So quite a lot of this movie was stock footage, yeah.
And interestingly, I think the pacing of it is really weird because you have like kind of no concept of how much time has passed, and maybe that's like part of the dream character of it, but I don't think that's intentional. But what is funny is that since it's made pre-ICBM, the Soviet nuclear attack has to go step by step. So they have to like nuke Alaska and then nuke California and take over California, and then nuke the Midwest, and then
Oh.
finally get to New York and nuke New York.
Wait, at which point, by the way, and very important, can't believe I forgot this, the Soviets dress up in American uniforms, just like we saw in the comic book a minute ago, and go on their merry way. And I think at the end, they assault Congress while it's in session, and that politician from the bar also gets shot in the back. All right, so that's the first 5 years here of this theme here. We started with the comic, went to the 52 anti-communist propaganda Dante's Inferno dream sequence with a hypnotist wizard, and now, ladies and gentlemen, the meat to our potatoes, Invasion USA 1985, a movie that I saw as a child, apparently. And Boris, you'll attest to this. I didn't realize it until I saw that fucking little girl get blown up with the Christmas tree.
Yes.
I remembered. To be honest, I've been searching for this movie for quite a while because that scene as a child was like burned into my brain. And I always thought it was like a Die Hard or something, but it wasn't. And I could never like figure out what the fuck it was until we watched it for this episode with J.G. Michael. So it's Kismet.
Indeed. Well, okay. So this obviously comes on the other end of the Cold War,
which is crazy, by the way, that it's bookended like this, isn't it? Like it's the very beginning of the
very
Cold
beginning,
War and almost the very end of the Cold War,
and almost the very end,
Yeah.
and very similar films of the same name.
Yes.
So what do you know about? So this is, as we mentioned, written by Chuck Norris's brother, co-written by Chuck Norris's brother. Chuck Norris took part, and directed by Joseph Zito, who himself is a pretty interesting guy.
You want me to talk about Joe Zito, or?
Yeah, how fucking.
Oh yeah, please.
Zito.
I want to know everything about everyone that was involved in any part of this. Like I tracked down the little girl that got blown up the other day, and it's not as I thought it was. What's that? Oh my god, it's oh shit, it was just in my head. The blonde woman with the talk show, America's Sweetheart type, not Meg Ryan, but a worse Meg Ryan.
You lost me there, buddy.
Oh my god. It's a late episode for us. It's like midnight.
That's my bad. I had to have you guys do this late.
No, it's okay. That just means like, the people are going to get what they're going to get.
Well, I gotta say, this movie is a really wild one. And it's sort of like almost part of a trilogy Joe Zito did back in the 80s. So Zito, to my understanding, Joe Zito as a director starts out, I think he was initially trying to get into documentary filmmaking and wanting to do more like artsy style movies. And then he just realized, I ain't going to make money that way. So he becomes one of these directors for hire. I would call him, I mean, he's a hack, but I don't mean that in like a negative way. I mean that, he's a guy that's hired by studios to make films that are going to sell to a mass audience and will exploit some type of fear or something that people want to see, whether it's explosions or boobs or whatever. He knows how to deliver those goods for the studios. And he was sort of one of the main people that the Cannon Film Group, led by Yoram Globus and Menachem Golan, would basically employ to make these type of movies. Before Invasion USA, he does Missing in Action, which I believe is also a Cannon film, also with Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Then in '88, he does the Jack Abramoff connected movie, Red Scorpion. So this is like his anti-communist trilogy in the 80s. Missing in Action, Invasion USA, Red Scorpion. Before that, he's more known for the slasher films he did. So in '79, he does a movie called Blood Rage. In '81, he does The Prowler, which I think is one of the most interesting slasher movies since
I got to agree with you on that one. Yeah.
Well, the killer in it is a World War II vet. And there's almost I think it's arguably like weirdly an anti-war slasher movie. You could make the case for that. And he's probably most known for Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which is a lot of people's favorite Friday the 13th movie if you're like an 80s horror movie buff. He also, what is interesting is I haven't seen this movie, but he did a movie based on the Patty Hearst kidnapping too.
No way.
In '75.
That's his like one of his first ones, no?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's his first big one. Yeah. So, I mean,
nice.
I don't know his actual politics. I've seen a few interviews with him, But he never really talks about politics. He sort of just talks about, oh yeah, I got hired to do this, this, and that. One of the funniest stories is that he made Missing in Action and Missing in Action 2, the beginning, were being made back to back. And he just says to Golan and Globus, Missing in Action 2, I've read the script. It looks like crap. It's going to be a horrible movie. You should release mine first. Because originally the Missing in Action that Joseph Zito directed was supposed to be the sequel that would be released second. Joseph Zito said, this movie is so terrible, the first one, that you should release that one second and mine first.
Nice.
Release. So Missing in Action 2 was actually meant to be the first movie, but Zito convinced them to release it as a prequel, as the second movie.
And just for context, it's just in the historical moment here, we're talking about a time when you got guys like Bo Gritz, kind of a super big right-wing military man leading the MIA Missing in Action movement. That was...
I was going to say the Chuck Norris character here reminded me of Bo Gritz.
Sure. Yeah.
Totally.
Although, man, I'll tell you what, though. I've seen Bo Gritz on TV, and that man has a lot more range than Chuck does.
I think most people do, even if they're... Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those weird 80s canon anti-communist movies. And, it's weird. Canon was pretty well known for being reactionary as a little like mini major film studio back in the day. So they made this, they made pretty much all the Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme movies.
Okay.
But they were also known for the Alan Quatermain movies, which were sort of Indiana Jones ripoffs. But what's interesting about those movies is if you've read the book Real Bad Arabs, REEL, Real Bad Arabs, Cannon gets put to task for the Alan Quatermain movies because they're really like deeply anti-Arab movies. And also Cannon, both Globus and Urim Globus and Menachem Golan, I mean, they were like pretty hardcore pro-Israel propagandists. They even made a film in the 70s that they thought would be a big, prestige film called Operation Thunderbolt with Klaus Kinski and Sybil Danning that is like straight up a pro-Israel, like Mossad propaganda film about Arab terrorists. They were really big in pushing a lot of, anti-Arab tropes throughout the 70s and 80s in their films.
I mean, we saw fucking Chuck campaign for Bibi. Like, I guess it all comes together, huh?
Right. I mean, on the other hand, they also, produced some films that I would say are not as reactionary. So, like, the films of Tobe Hooper in the 80s are pretty much all made by Cannon. Specifically Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is literally like a movie that compares capitalism to cannibalism. So they're two very weird film producers, the guys that ran Cannon. I think they had reactionary politics, but I also think they were just meatheads that would give people money if they thought they could, get more money out of it.
I mean, I guess they were in the business, so I mean,
I think they were business guys first and forast. Not the best business guys because they often did not pay people.
Well, that's what all the best business guys do.
But it's interesting within the context of Cannon because they made a lot of reactionary films. I mean, they made all the Death Wish sequels. That's all you need to know. Right?
Yeah, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
So this is part of the Cannon Film Group's, litany of, anti-communist and sort of right-wing meathead propaganda films of the time. And like I said, Joe Zito directs it. I think he, I don't know his politics. I kind of wonder about them, but he knows how to make an entertaining meathead movie. I'll give him that.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, there are elements of this film that I think are actually kind of well done in some ways. Technically, at least.
I think he directs it like he's the way I'll put it is, like I said, I don't consider him a bad B-movie director. He gets the job done. And I feel like he directs it. I think every good B-movie director should direct their, genre movies as if they're making a live action comic book. And that's sort of how he directs it. I mean, it feels like a live action comic book. So
yeah, this is why Con Air is like one of the greatest action movies ever made.
Yeah. I mean, there are some even I don't know, kind of even jump scare moments in the beginning of this film that kind of stood out to me and kind of made
lots.
me think,
yeah, throughout the film, in fact. And it's great because sometimes those jump scare moments happen because it's one of these commie Nazis. I mean, we're like 80s now, so essentially at this point, it's the same thing completely. Like America's just accepted that there's no difference between communists and Nazis for a movie's sake, you know. So you get these.
Well, I mean, yeah, when the bad guys appear, they're speaking both Russian and German for some reason.
Yes, and he looks like fucking Falco, to be honest, I thought. And great, interesting actor, really great character actor, by the way, leading the communists in this movie. But all of his like subordinates are, of course, like Sandinistas and like black liberation strugglers and stuff like that, and people with like dirt on their face. Really,
it's a mixed bag because some of them are definitely supposed to be Russian too.
Yeah, also,
it's just a coalition of bad guys.
Chuck Norris, I think the ones at the beginning are supposed to be like Latin American rebels or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, the film opens in a kind of interesting way, and to be honest, I had this suspicion, and I was wrong, that so the film opens with like a boat of refugees, Cuban, obviously,
Cubans
speaking Spanish. This is the 80s, and I was like, okay, well, if it's anything like the 1950s movie, it'll start with like the story will be kind of told through them. They'll be the ones to tell us why communism's bad, you know, because they're like refugees from Cuba, and they have to like teach Americans who have forgotten who the enemy is. But I was completely wrong, because the Coast Guard rolls up, and we think that they're about to get rescued, when all of a sudden the main villain, who we figure out is named Rostov, which is again very my favorite genre of Slavic names is when they just pick a city, like just be like, it's Colonel Vladivostok, and like, you know, whatever.
The movie takes place in St. Petersburg, Florida. Like that's a real place.
It doesn't. No, it's in Miami, and then it inexplicably moves northward throughout the film. They don't really tell you. You just find out, oh, we're in Atlanta now. Oh,
yeah. I think a lot of it was filmed there, as I understand it, and really interesting.
And in Miami. But like the main villain, Rostov, played by Richard Lynch, comes out on deck. They're all dressed in like Coast Guard uniforms, and then they open fire and they kill everyone on board this boat, including like the cute little boy. Cute little kids dying is a theme in this, or almost dying is a theme in this movie. Yeah. And then they of course lift up the floorboards of the ship and pull out a bunch of cocaine, because again, it's the 80s, and you know why this boat is loaded with cocaine is never really explained.
Because Spanish.
Many things are.
It's Spanish. That's why.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's how the film opens, and it was quite surprising to me. Just a lot of violence off the bat, and I was like, okay, this is a proper,
not bad,
proper 80s action
film.
Let's go. Yeah.
It hits all the beats, you know.
Yeah,
totally, definitely.
Also, just the casting on it is so perfect too, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, Richard Lynch. You know, this is what I mean by it. It's like, was
that the villain? Sorry, was Richard?
Richard Lynch
he was
plays
so
Rostov, but he's perfect for it. And you know, he's a guy that got pigeonholed for this, but he made a career out of it. He has actual like scarring from when he was really young, so he could only get these roles as heavies. Yeah. And like, you know, I think they knew how audiences would react to his appearance, and you know, he does make a really good villain.
Yeah,
he looks intimidating, you know?
Yeah. It's like an Austrian Russian.
Right.
Americans have no idea what to do with something like that. No way.
Yeah, he definitely stands out for sure.
Yeah, and then I love the cameo by, it's in the first act, is Billy Drago, who is another character actor that he has a very distinct look that sets him up for these roles. Very serpentine. He plays the guy
he plays the guy behind the cocaine.
Yeah. Cocaine. And then Richard Lynch this is why I'm giving this movie a 5 out of 5, just because Richard Lynch blows his nuts off in it.
Yeah, he blows multiple people's nuts off
in his pants.
Yes. It was.
But before
awesome.
that is probably one of my favorite death in this film is like, so again, they got this cocaine and somehow they're selling it to Billy Drago, and there's a woman testing the cocaine. She has like the nice like metal straw, and he just bashes it into her fucking brain while she's snorting it.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. That was, I mean...
Yeah, before, that's what Richard Lynch does before he blows off his nuts, Billy Drago's nuts, which is great.
Pretty great.
It's just a great series of deaths.
Well, it's great because it's a scene that's like, again, telling you what this movie is.
Yes.
Like, this movie knows exactly what it is. There's going to be coke.
Yeah.
There's going to be, I mean, they have the gratuitous nudity in the bar scene. Like,
Yeah.
Joseph Zito knew the type of movie he was making. And in a way,
Absolutely.
I respect that.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
But he also was able to, I feel like, make it his own little gore horror film, on his own. Like it's like a little skunk works inside this movie,
Yeah, I mean
it's not boring. That's what we'll tell people who are wondering.
No, it starts on a fucking airboat ship. What do you call a fan boat in the fucking Everglades with Chuck Norris shirtless, looking like a bunch of grilled meat, just going through, flying over alligators and shit.
Yeah, and he's got the full like denim, cut off denim vest with no shirt under it, driving the fucking fan boat. It's got a really good classic action movie opening score too, dun 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 dun.
Yeah, oh, that's great. It's playing right now.
Oh, okay, yeah. The magic of editing.
That's right. Yeah.
This is a complete side note, by the way, but I find it hilarious that the cinematographer for this movie, and I don't want to botch their name, but I think it's something Fernandez. I'm not good with Brazilian names. But
Boris is an expert at Brazilian Portuguese. Ask him anything. In fact, make him pronounce things.
So the cinematographer for this movie is that he was known before this for being one of the main cinematographers during the golden age of porno chic in the this is the same cinematographer that did Deep Throat and The Devil and Miss Jones.
No way. Whoa. Weird.
Oh wow. And I see worked with Frank Zito on Friday the 13th Final Chapter.
Yeah, Joseph. Yeah.
Oh, and Children of Corn too. Wow.
Yeah.
Damn, okay.
This is an illustrious pedigree.
It's a good choice for some. I mean, the dude knew how to shoot, quick and dirty. So, I mean, I that's one thing I respect about these movies. They know how to. I mean, they do get professionals to do a lot of this stuff, like people that know how to work on a low budget film. Another person I was going to mention was Jay Chataway, who did the score for the movie. He also did the score for one of my favorite horror movie sequels, Maniac Cop 2, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Nice.
I think there's elements of this movie that I really like, even though I also think it is eye roll inducing and B movie, but there's a lot of fun to it too.
Yeah, I mean,
it's also kind of Turner Diaries-y at certain points,
right.
But
I said was
it is
it's
fun.
I think it's I described it to someone when I was rewatching it recently for this show.
Yeah.
I called it the John Birch Society, the movie.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's times I would take it even further. I think this is a bit more black pilled even for the Birchers. But
I mean, it's
times,
just like it's like really a pastiche of different stereotypes put together, one after the other.
It is like a Bircher's wet dream, though. I mean, this is what they fantasize about when taking revenge on the commie fucking takeover that's already happened.
Well, even the idea of this is how the communists will invade us. They will use our freedom against us.
Oh, exactly.
And you can see that type of stuff in the writings of the ultimate Birch scribe in the 60s and 70s was Gary Allen, the guy who wrote None Dare Call It Conspiracy. But while watching this, I'm thinking, this movie is basically the essay he wrote for one of the Bircher rags, Underground U.S.A., where Gary Allen argues, the communists are infiltrating the schools. They are using our freedom against us.
Yeah.
It's Gary Allen type Bircher rhetoric. Even there was that Bircher documentary, Anarchy USA. That's it was the Birchers have covered it up now pretty well and don't talk about it. But it was their anti-civil rights documentary where they claim, MLK and the entire civil rights movement is a commie plot. They're using our freedom against us.
Well, they might bring it back out.
The freedom to protest.
It's a pretty good climate right now for that kind of thing. It might have a second life.
I mean, I think when Chuck Norris talked about this movie, he specifically said it he was inspired by reading about terrorism and that Gaddafi and Khomeini could just strike us at any point, and it's because
of our freedom. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
But he thought he not only said that it could happen, he said he was sure that it will happen. And and he would quote his characters from this movie to prove that point, which is also fucking crazy.
So just
another good example to compare this, it's basically World Nut Daily the movie, or World Net Daily the movie.
Yeah.
Who Chuck Norris ends up writing for them after this.
Right.
Oh my God, you're right. Yeah, we did see that shit. Some fucking fascist shit, right?
but that is interesting, where it's kind of, since it's on the other end of the Cold War, the main point of the first Invasion USA is that Americans aren't focused enough on victory, and that they need to make concessions, for example, building tanks for at tractor factories, and paying your share in taxes because it'll help the war effort. Also, that film came out during the Korean War, right? And then this is on the opposite end, where Bircher kind of thought prevails a lot more in the right wing. And so it's, Chuck Norris is an alligator wrestling fucking dude that lives out in Florida in off the grid shack, just on his fan boat. And when the government asks him to help, which this suit and tie Fed goes out there in a fucking rowboat to go tell him that he's needed, he has to say, I do it alone.
Yeah.
It's completely lost that America needs to come together and fight the communists together and make concessions.
Right. It's very that's something that I always say comes up in a lot of Michael Bay movies that the Transformers movies and stuff, because they're these insanely right-wing movies that also have to do the really anti-government thing, where it's well, we have to fight this evil force, but the government is what gets in the way, the bureaucracy is what gets in the way,
and they're inept,
and they're inept. I have my issues with the state, but their criticism is sort of the bureaucracy doesn't let the strong man like Chuck Norris do what he has to do.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because in this film, they're literally an impediment to him, right? They arrest him because they don't realize that he's
it's part of that tradition in action
also
movies.
Great characters, by the way. Those guys.
Right. Yeah, but it really is part of a tradition of action movies going back to the Cold War, even to those Michael Bay movies of how do you appeal to 12-year-olds? You present this vision where it's if only the bureaucracy would let the military and the fucking strongman get what he has to do done.
Right.
Yeah. It's a very simplistic cavemanish view of the world.
Totally. And something that was definitely prevalent post-Vietnam War thought too.
Yes.
Vietnam was lost by the politicians, and if the military and the operators had their way, it would have been over, and whatever.
Yeah. If we could just drop our Green Beret death squads into their nuclear wasteland, that would have been perfect. It's like when they fucking did those military simulations against Iran, and the guy that was playing Iran whooped their ass in 3 hours, so they had to make him do it over again, but told him he couldn't do this, this, and this. It's those guys are watching this movie,
Right. The other thing that stands out to me is, there's a very Dirty Harry-esque element to it all, where it gives you that same message of only someone as brutal as Rostov can destroy Rostov. Because Chuck Norris is pretty.
That goes both ways, though.
Well, yeah, but Chuck Norris is pretty douchey in this movie too.
He is.
Oh, he's terrible.
He's a monster. He's the Turner Diaries. He's that fucking what's his name?
When Fritz and I were watching this,
he is a Harry Callahan figure too in this. In a lot of ways, Dirty Harry Callahan is also an asshole, but he's the asshole we need. That's kind of the same theme here.
To discipline the races,
right?
What's so fucking fascist about that?
And of course, Rostov, and there's an implication that Chuck Norris's previous role for the government was maybe something in Latin America, And that's where like him and Rostov have this rivalry from, which again is like, for the point of this movie being that like, this strong man who's impeded by the government to like do what he needs to do was like, probably running CIA death squads in like Guatemala or something. Like,
Yeah.
And that's somehow okay. But like when he's back home, he's got to, do it alone.
She's got to do his own, a death squad of one. That's a great Chuck Norris film title, by the way. He's still around. It's not too late. Think of it. Death Squad of One. Huh?
Is that him like going into the Guatemalan Civil War and just massacring Mayan villagers or something? Or?
It doesn't have to be Guatemala. It could be all over the world. I see it as a whole series, All
right, I support it.
Get McDonald's involved, get some little toys, get the Happy Meal back where they had good toys, and have them all be Chuck Norris massacring some peasant somewhere.
Real quick before we like kind of jump more into some plot points, I just wanted to note one other kind of good casting role, which is the John Eagle.
Who's played by the guy who
Dale
sacrificed to start the rampage trigger. Is there a word for that in your film studies? The guy who triggers a rampage? There must be a word for that.
Don't know.
My partner yelled, "He's John Wick's dog" when we watched it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the character of John Eagle's funny. He just shows up in the beginning to be like Chuck Norris's buddy that also has like a fan boat and lives out in the swamp or whatever.
And mental scarring from Nam.
Yeah. But he's an actor that was best known for, playing like native roles in Westerns.
Oh, word.
Pretty famous for that. And just briefly appears in this film, only to be killed by Rostov's death squads when they decide that like the only thing they can do is preemptively strike Chuck Norris at his
Rostov
compound.
like wakes up in a cold sweat, remembering that Chuck Norris is still alive. What's his name? Hunter.
Oh, what's his name in the film? Matt Hunter.
Hunter. Yeah. Hunter, by the way, the sequel to the Turner Diaries. Just saying. Just throwing that out there.
That is true.
Yeah. So Hunter is clearly a threat to Rostov. They've tangled before. And Rostov wakes up in a cold sweat. I think maybe even murders somebody in this scene. I don't really remember. But does send out his goon squad to go and hit the swamp shack. Swamp shack, baby. That Chuck Norris is probably uses to meditate. And they come with like 16 fucking fan boats and a bunch of RPGs and, high caliber mounted machine guns and just blow the place.
This definitely checks off like the weapons that were popular in the 80s.
Yeah, if they had a nunchuck launcher, I would have just lost my shit.
Because like grenade launchers, I think grenade launchers and like RPGs and like any kinds of rocket launchers were real big in the 80s with these kinds of movies. And they feature very heavily in this.
Yeah. Well, because this is also, I think, maybe a Dirty Harry-ish thing, because Dirty Harry is also known for carrying around a huge hand cannon and, like, shooting minorities with it. So, like, they're thinking, what's even cooler than Dirty Harry's gun? Fucking bazooka. Let's have, like, 30 bazookas.
I'm just imagining, this came out, like, the same year as Death Wish 3, which was also a canon movie, and also had, bazookas in the finale. And I'm just imagining Urim Globus and Menahem Golem, snorting lines of coke while they're talking to the director.
Yes.
And just being like, it needs more bazookas.
Yes, more. I
grenade
more.
launchers.
Yes.
They blow another line.
Are we called canon or not? God damn it.
We still got the props from Invasion USA. Let's go put them to use.
God damn, so many bazookas, so many fucking fan boats. Loved it. So yeah, so perfect beginning.
I really need to wonder. The thing that gets me is like, I wonder what was going on in the minds of Chuck and Aaron Norris as they wrote this. Because I love how there's just these characters that like pop in and sort of pop out, and they don't really serve any function. Like you said, there's the John Eagle character who's just there to get killed. And then there's like the journalist chick who you think Chuck Norris may get with her, but then you realize, Chuck Norris is like an asexual superhero type in this. So she's just there for some reason.
Yeah, his junk does not work. He's trained it to just fucking nothingness. It's just muscle down there. It's more abs. He's just got like just another 6-pack just dangling free down there.
I don't know. She's a weird character too, because like, she appears really early on in the film, and you're like, okay, this is like the journalist, potential love interest.
Yes.
And she's like, she's giving the authorities a hard time. But basically her whole role in the film is kind of to bust everyone's balls. Like like there isn't even like the romantic angle. She's just like a nagging woman.
Well, yeah.
Because like,
who's dressed a little bit like April O'Neil from the Ninja Turtles. A lot like it. And has exactly the same job and attitude.
But she's kind of like still like the most likable character out of
she definitely
anybody
is.
in the film. She's like the only one with any kind of real personality or actually like kind of comments on the situation anyway at all.
And I mean, I like the villain, but he blew up a lot of kids. You can't
and
really
like
get behind that.
Her story makes sense. She's like, it makes sense that she's in all the places that she's in because she's a journalist covering them. As we'll see like later in the movie, Chuck Norris just kind of finds out what things are happening and she's there at the perfect, like it's not explained at all, like ever.
Yeah, there's no way to know. They're very
there's
quiet.
even the scene where the journalist yells out, she's like, Hunter, help!
Yes,
he shows up.
He appears. It's amazing in his fucking truck,
and then he does what he does best: is put people in danger by his like reckless antics. Because he just rolls up behind, like she's being held hostage by like a terrorist, and he just rolls up and blows the dude's head off.
Yes.
And she's like, "Damn, you could have killed me. Like maybe that wasn't the best way to do that."
Well, that's the funny thing.
And he said, like,
movie,
"Yeah,
right?
I know," or like, "Could have."
That's the irony, though. It's like I'm assuming what Chuck and Aaron had in mind when they wrote this was she's going to be the ineffectual liberal journalist,
exactly.
And like you're watching it, and I guess there's some people that react that way to it, but I was like, oh, she's the only the
only rational person in the whole thing that is actually like doing something you're supposed to do for society, like tell a story. Chuck Norris just shows up in somebody's like garage or some shit and starts fucking nailing people to tables and like without introductions.
Well, that scene is like probably the best illustration of his recklessness. Is that like this is the only time we're given where he like tries to interrogate one of these like dudes connected to the terrorists to figure out what's going on.
Maybe,
and it's like
he doesn't fucking know. He just like shows up to this dude's like house.
No, like he knows where, like, because this is the bar, right? And like, there's like a bunch of like Cuban muscle guys outside, like
fixing a car, washing a car,
washing their car, and then like he rolls up into this bar and he's just like a huge asshole to everyone in there.
Yes,
and then he finds the bad guy, but like all those other people that are like responding negatively to him are responding that way because he just barges into a bar and he's like, where the fuck is blah blah blah, and like
he's psychotic,
like, pushing people out of the way, and then proceeds to endanger, like, okay, he's interrogating the dude. He fucking basically takes a big ass knife out and nails his hand to the fucking table while he's interrogating him and blah, blah, blah. And then he proceeds to give him a live grenade to hold in his hand while he gets out. And I'm like, this is a bar full of innocent people.
Well, yeah, but also in that process, like he got in a fight with the dude that was washing his car who came in because somebody yelled for help because some psychotic white dude was in there fucking stabbing people.
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's like, what is that? Falling Down? What is that movie?
Oh, yeah, the Michael
Douglas. Yeah. Yeah, but Falling Down is actually like a well-written film, and compared to this,
I will defend Falling Down until the day I die. I think people misunderstand that movie, but
hot.
I actually kind of do too, but I haven't watched it in a very long time. Or that's not true, but I need to rewatch it.
That's the next movie.
I don't care.
We've talked about actually doing it,
but yes, we should do this. Yes, this is great. But anyway, back to this psycho.
The thing about this movie, though, is like, I enjoy the action set pieces and stuff, but I feel like when Chuck Norris and Aaron Norris were writing this, they just felt the need to like insert their life philosophy into it, which, I mean, judging by this movie, their life philosophy is, wouldn't it be great if we lived under like police state martial law rules?
Yes. Well, as long as they didn't. They're like, they're the Evolian anarchs, they just float above it.
No, there's these moments in the movie where like the action just stops and you just have like Chuck Norris or someone else saying something like, no one respects authority anymore.
Yes. Well, look, look, I'm not even kidding. That is 0.8 8 of the code of honor of the Chuck Norris martial arts system, by the way. Point 8 is, I will maintain respect for those in authority and demonstrate respect at all times. Point 9, I will always remain loyal to my God, my country, family, and my friends. And finally, point 10, I will remain highly goal-oriented throughout my life because that positive attitude helps my family, my country, and my friends. So that's all he's doing here. He's just being goal-oriented, maintaining that positive attitude. I can massacre this fucking party of, I don't know, Cubans hanging out.
As long as I get
cars.
to Rostov.
Yeah, to Rostov. It's all for Rostov.
I also like how there's like that one. I think the character's name is Nico, the second in command to Rostov of sorts, and he just gets off out of like nowhere in it. Like there's no like build up. Like you're thinking this dude is like the second in command, and then he's just like Chuck Norris is like blowing his head off.
Yeah. Well, that's because he's a badass. It's to keep you on your toes, you know.
But just to get back to like, okay, the central premise of what's happening here. Nico actually reminded me because there's a great scene. So when the invasion actually happens, when the terrorists invade Florida, there's a great scene of like this couple like making out on a beach. And for some reason, I don't know if this is when those like portable mini TVs came out. They feature very heavily in this film. Like they appear multiple times.
Yeah.
So they're like on the beach making out. And they got their TV going, and it's like perfect, blissful, like American Florida life. And then Nico just comes out of nowhere and executes them, and then like the invasion begins. And they come out on like straight up like fucking like World War II era landing craft.
Yes.
Like
it's weird.
Running out, speaking Russian and Spanish and German, and then getting into these unmarked vehicles that proceed to go around the country. And so the plot again is that America's freedom of movement makes it so that anybody can go anywhere and attack at any time.
Exactly.
And so like, some of them are in like, white vans, some of them are in like, whatever, different kinds of like trucks or, whatnot. And they just all go their separate ways. And then somehow, when Chuck Norris figures this out, he intervenes in every single one of these as they keep going on. And they happen almost in the most formulaic setups possible.
Yeah.
So like the first massacre that you're really treated to is probably my favorite one, which is like, of course it's Christmas.
Yes, it's a Christmas movie.
What other time could this happen? Well, it's like Christmas in the beginning, and then they kind of drop the Christmas theme.
It comes back.
Like,
I mean, there's also the shopping mall set piece.
Shopping mall is all Christmas. So much Christmas in this.
But like, okay, so the setup is for all of these scenarios that he intervenes in, like innocent child, like childhood innocence, in like the most like corny way possible. So like, the little girl decorating the Christmas tree in the cul-de-sac. And
the name I was thinking of, who I thought that little girl was, but wasn't, and I couldn't think of it. And she has a talk show, and her name is Drew Barrymore. But it's not Drew Barrymore.
You thought it was Drew Barrymore?
I thought it was Drew Barrymore, and then I looked it up, and it was actually
she
a girl who
not
was
that young.
This was a girl who was on the Gilmore Girls instead.
Oh, really?
And it was not Drew Barrymore. She had a role there for 2 episodes as like Trin, I think. But
interesting.
Everybody's somebody, Boris. So there you go.
But yeah, like. The children doing their innocent child thing interrupted by like horrible violence is
so the children doing their innocent thing and the couple making out.
The couple making out in the car. Yeah, like kids on their bicycles. It's the idyllic suburban life, and then these bad guy terrorists roll up and with RPGs fire at every single house.
Yes,
they can
at fucking real houses, because apparently they were going to build an airport there in that neighborhood and tear the whole thing down anyway. So they let the filmmakers go and blow up the fucking neighborhood. How great is this?
I mean, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
That's a real ass mall they're blowing up.
I mean, the mall scene is kind of like more scary when you look at it in like 2024 with 2024 eyes, because it is just like a mass shooting in a mall. Basically.
It is. But you know who stops it? A good guy with a good guy with a truck, actually.
Yes,
and
the
a
guy with
gun.
the truck.
Actually, double Uzis that he holds like a T-Rex instead of
Well, he holds
kicking
him like
people.
a T-Rex because they're fastened with like leather straps to his little what is
little
that?
tiny body.
It's not even a holster. It's some sort of like harness that he has on.
I thought
And she's
that
like,
was,
it doesn't give him good range of motion either. He's just basically holding them up at like chest level and moving back and forth and firing.
I think they're cute. They give like Water Wings vibes somehow. I don't know how, but like a T-Rex Water Wings. But the thing is like there's almost no martial arts in this movie, and there's so many times where I kept thinking he was going to do it. The mall, especially. I mean, like so many things to vault over, to like slide under.
That's a good point. In weird ways, it feels more like a movie that Charles Bronson would be in.
Yes, it is. It's like a weird white vengeance film. It really is.
Yeah, you really don't get the martial arts until the very, very last showdown.
And just a little bit.
It's building towards it, like you said, Fritz. You're expecting it to happen, then it just doesn't.
Yes. Why did he even wear the boots if he's not going to kick people in the face with them? Well, he does kick one guy in the face. I have it here as my picture right now, actually, but that's the only guy, I think.
One thing I do love about the mall sequence. So again, the listener isn't losing much by not
there's
getting
no fucking plot
play-by-play breakdown of this. Like it's just different scenarios that he intervenes in.
Yeah, there's really no plot. It's kind of just a series of action set.
It's like playing. It's like playing Hitman, kind of, I guess, where you're just dropped off in a scenario. Like mall, go kill, and you do it.
But my favorite part of the mall is that it showcases like a great another like 80s maybe anxiety about like the auto industry. Because like the main showpiece in the mall is like a Nissan truck.
Yeah.
And then the only like car chase in this film is done like, so Chuck Norris busts into the mall in like, an American, like whatever.
Ford
like,
Steel.
Like a Ford or some shit. And then like the chase happens, like he's in like a Mustang. Yeah. And he's chasing down the terrorists who are in a Nissan, which was just like very...
Dragging some white girl by her blonde hair the whole time, by the way. As he shoots at them.
As he shoots at them. And it's also the journalist's time to shine because she helps rescue the poor woman being dragged by the terrorists.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she's the only one who has like good ideas in the whole film. I feel like he must have known this, no? The director at least had to have. Because Chuck wanted Whoopi Goldberg to play that part, apparently. And
which is really fascinating.
It didn't happen. It is fascinating. That's very fascinating. Yes. He was very angry that it didn't happen.
Yeah, and Joseph Zito vetoed it.
Yeah, he said he's not going to work with. He said he's not going to work with Zito anymore after this. This is what he said.
Yeah, which is why I guess Zito didn't do the sequel. But I guess Chuck Norris wasn't in the sequel either. Huh?
No, he's not. It's Michael Dudikoff is in this.
It was only Whoopi Goldberg.
That is weird. I didn't know he was so adamant about having Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah, that's very strange. I can't really place that in the whole opus here.
Yeah, that kind of doesn't make any sense, but I believe it.
No, I want the annoying woman to be black. I said it 6 times.
Fritz, to your point about the Turner Diaries, there's a very, very Turner Diaries-esque.
You talking about the drive-through?
The drive-through that has no point in the film.
Yeah, just to show the
you remember this, JG?
Of
like
America.
when he's like driving and it's just a bunch of like, it's like, crime in the city.
Prostitution, drug use.
Prostitution, homelessness, like bikers with like chains and shit like that.
People frowning.
Frowning
right at you. Yeah.
That to me is just pure
eye contact galore. Total nightmare. But it's also on, I think, Boris, was this not on Walker Street?
Yeah, there is some interesting foreshadowing there because this is before Walker, Texas Ranger. But yeah, I did notice. I'm not sure if it's in this scene or in the car chase.
Pretty close. It's in there. Well, I think it's in this scene because he ends up hitting like a police blockade and has to slowly turn around. I don't think there's like a car chase.
And you see the Walker Street sign several times.
It was just a glimmer in Aaron Norris's eye at the time, I guess.
Which Aaron was involved with Walker, Texas.
It's his show.
Yeah, it's his show.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So maybe he had the idea already.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but even for a movie about terrorism from this time period, it just feels like Aaron and Chuck really laid it on thick with their ideology in a way that even movies like Nighthawks, it's a reactionary movie, But
I don't know Nighthawks. What is Nighthawks?
Stallone versus Rutger Hauer is an international terrorist named Wolfgar.
Awesome.
It's the movie where you get to see Stallone in drag. But even that movie doesn't like lay it on so thick with like basically this movie is like Chuck Norris telling you, this is my politics, this is how you should think about the world.
Yeah,
I don't even
as much.
I don't even think I see it as much in, like Michael Winner's movies. Like, and his movies are really reactionary. He did the Death Wish movies, but like at least the third Death Wish almost becomes like a parody of it. This movie is like dead serious about everything.
Yes, that's what makes it really scary. Actually, like really bad, really corny, and very serious and very dangerous is pretty much what we study on our show. Right. That combination of things,
But like I still feel like it's not a super effective propaganda film for that exact reason, right? It's too heavy-handed, and so like
choir,
I think that I think for most, or not even to the choir, I think like for most audiences, they did what I did, which is like when the terrorists plant the bomb on the school bus and the kids are like, singing The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round or something. I was just like, oh shit, it's going to fucking blow up.
Yeah, but it didn't,
They're going
which
to kill all
sucked,
those kids.
Huge disappointment, that scene. But listen, imagine yourself though, Boris, not as a jaded adult, but as a dewy-eyed 6-year-old Fritz, all by himself in front of the TV in 1986 or whenever, looking at these poor kids thinking, that could be me.
I guess so.
Where's my Chuck Norris?
My head's fucked up because I think I always enjoyed those kinds of movies, but yeah.
So you go outside, you wander around, and you whistle "Proud to be an American" to yourself to cool down. And then you accidentally watch Cyborg 2, Boris, and you think it's a He-Man movie, but it's not. And then a little girl's hand starts bleeding because some guy's fucking twisting a knife in it, and then you feel really guilty about it, and you decide to tell your parents.
Oh,
so
that's
okay, that
almost...
was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, there's lots of ways to look at this.
The only thing about this movie that takes the edge off of its horrible politics is that it's like, it's a really sleazy movie.
Yes, it is. It's very much like a Fash Fic thing.
Yeah. It's just like, and now we're going to have a scene in a topless bar. And it's like, it's very apparent that they're,
a
trying
fucking topless Confederate bar, let me remind you, which he wasn't in there to clean house in. He was just there to find his best friend in.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, it is telling that like the only like good place that he goes, like the only place where he's not like kicking ass is like a place with a giant Confederate flag on the wall.
Yes. No, several. There are several.
I actually missed the Confederate flag when I was watching this.
Well, yeah, you were wrapped by his amazing acting. The gravitas that surrounds him when he opens up this biker bar.
What's funny? Like, what reckless thing is he going to do now and endanger civilians?
But no, nothing. Because you know what? He walks in with this face, like, I'm going to fight you face. But that's just his face. That's just the face he always has. That's his face when he's around
that's
friends.
Why I call him Walker Texas Corpse.
Yes, it's true.
He just looks like it's the same expression constantly. He's like a wooden plank. I think there are wooden planks with better acting than him.
Yes. Well, it's the John Wayne school of acting.
Yeah.
You see. Leave him
alone.
Isn't Walker Texas Corpse an anal cunt song too?
Yes, it is.
Yes,
nice,
okay.
Bravo.
I thought so.
All right.
I'm glad you got the reference. I was waiting for someone to get it.
That's weirdly our first anal cunt reference on the show. I can't believe it's been 260 odd episodes, and only now did we finally get here. Thanks to J.G. Michael from Parallax Views.
Well, somebody had to break the ice there.
Goddamn right. Should this be? Let me just bring in. Look, we lost Ray today, but he did send some notes. Maybe I can just bring them up now.
Oh yes, please do.
Yeah, and then we can collect ourselves and figure out how to end this thing. So these are Ray sends us his notes from some. I'm imagining cold but well-appointed place.
We need to AI generate his voice for these kinds of things. I think.
Can you not do a Ray impression after all this time?
I can, but I don't want to hurt his feelings if he doesn't like it.
It's an homage. It's an homage. You want to try it?
No. Read on.
All right. Ray writes, when I saw that... I'm kidding. That's fine. You see? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it worse. Ray writes, when I saw the hypnotist guy in the bar, I thought he's some German Nazi advisor to the U.S. government. Who is disgusted by Americans who are too weak and individualistic and don't take the Bolshevik threat seriously. In general, I thought the movie had for the U.S. an unusually pro-statist collectivist critique of American individualism. Yeah, definitely. But I actually thought the dude was a commie spy when I first saw him.
I did too.
Tell you what I didn't think he was a wizard hypnotist. That was really a surprise.
Well, that only clicked with me when I saw him like shake the ice around or whatever, shake the cognac around the glass, because I was okay, that's because it goes into a dream kind of.
You did call it early. You did. I got to give you props for that. You called it very early that this was going to be it's all a dream thing at the end. So the second thing he says is the other thing is wait a minute. Oh, okay. He thinks that Ray wanted to point out too, and this is very interesting, that the things that the communists are doing in this Norris film here that we're talking about are very similar to the Gladio shit in Brabant that was actually happening at this same fucking time, which is from 82 to 85, and this is at the end of that, which is a very interesting point. He says, I also got some anti-American individualism vibe from this film as well. A lot of resentment towards ordinary Americans. I think the authors almost identified with the commies in some moments. Like there was so much anticipation and suspense before every massacre. Sure, like they wanted the audience to feel something like, come on already, kill them all. Yes, we were just talking about that. That's how we thought about the bus. I was begging for him to fucking blow up the bus.
And for when they were going to blow up the church too. I thought
yes, also the church. And they fucked that up too. Also, the things the commies didn't make much sense, except maybe when they were killing dressed like cops. Otherwise, their actions seemed more likely to produce outcomes good for the U.S. government, exactly like intended in the actual Gladio stuff going on at the same time. Maybe this is a conscious or unconscious desire of U.S. fascists and conservatives, he writes, authors of the film, to Gladio their own American population into being more receptive for authoritarian and fascist politics. And they just used fictional commies to act out on their desire to discipline Americans. Well, Ray, I'm with you. Wish you were with us here, but this is why this is why you're on the show. Some good points there.
I think he's right in that. Yes, I mean obviously Aaron and Chuck have some major resentment towards like the American population, and
they're weak.
That they're weak and not ready for the
stupid
terrorist threat, and. Yes, that this warning sign is kind of a perverse desire of theirs to Gladio their own people. That being said, what's interesting is when they talk to Chuck Norris about his like fear of terrorism, he specifically talks about what's going on in Europe.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I was trying to think about what he was referring to, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in Europe in the 80s, but like, is he afraid of like, I don't know, the IRA, or is he thinking of like Gladio stuff and not knowing that that's, done with the help of the US government? Or if he does, is it more sinister?
He might just be thinking of like the fucking normal ass European socialist parties that, were doing pretty okay in like the late 70s and mid 80s and stuff. Like, I think it could be that simple, like what's going on over there is they're not doing what we ask them to and shit. But it's so weird.
Well, because it was specifically in reference to terrorism.
Yeah,
so
well, yeah.
I'm guessing that he was basing that off of something. But
well, and also think about this.
So expecting a lot for him, maybe.
But this is purely thematic today, which the first thing we looked at, the comic, was all about, these commies exploiting weaknesses in the system. It was a bit more like 1948 Gladio, and we moved to commies doing mass executions in a way that does, in fact, Ray's right, benefit like the idea of an authoritarian state taking charge, which is what Gladio was doing in like the 80s. So it's very interesting how this stuff lines up like that. And then in the 52 movie, of course, all these Americans were punished for their weaknesses. Again, they were disciplined. They were disciplined by the communists. So there is this sort of communist as a hand of God sort of thing here, which is funny because I thought they were Protestant. Chuck Norris goes to this fucking gigantic megachurch called, I think, Prestonwood Baptist, which in North Texas, you can see from multiple towns away. It's fucking massive. I mean, it's a flat land out there, so it's not a surprise, but like it really does like rise like a hill on the horizon. You know, Zion calls us. Tenepod will, after the revolution, begin to broadcast daily from Prestonwood Baptist Church. By the way, so get ready for that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to try to analyze this kind of deeper ideology in this film because how much of it's actually there. Because again, there's not really the plot. Like there's that interesting moment where he gets arrested by the government, Chuck Norris, and he's like sitting in a motel room watching like 40s like flying saucer like B movies.
Yeah.
And it kind
It's
of
the only point in the movie where he shows a facial expression other than like stone face. He smiles for like 1 second.
Yeah.
You're right.
He's like kind of chuckling and like eating snacks.
Chuckling.
But like he gets detained by the government and then they don't really explain how he gets back out for the final showdown. Like, does he break out or does he somehow convince him? It's just, nothing's
just
explained. It's just like, okay, the government doesn't understand me.
Yeah.
So they arrested me, but then suddenly he comes out right in time for the final showdown with Rostov.
I think I understand it now. Okay, now that you said this, I think I understand it. So he got arrested by the cops, and somehow I think emotionally this is the same as being sent to your room. So when we see him again later, that's where he is. He's like in timeout watching TV, you know? I feel like he might not totally understand jail.
As in, like, jail's a place that he can just leave.
That you go. No. That is, I think he thinks jail is the same as having a timeout in your room. So the next scene when he gets arrested is him by himself in his room. You see what I'm saying?
He gets arrested from that room. And then he threatens.
Fuck, you're right. Damn it.
He threatens Rostov on national television in a way that's not complete. Like, that guy would seem insane. Awesome. Like, you know, that he's being like hauled off to court. And then he just like looks at the camera and he's like,
"Is there anything you'd like to say to the media?"
Yeah. Nico was easy. Now it's your turn. One night you're gonna close your eyes. And when they open, I'll be there. It'll be time to die.
Which he doesn't say Rostov.
He doesn't say terrorist, bad terrorist man. I will. He's pointing
to the audience.
He just addresses the audience.
That's
and
Ray's
like, I will
point.
Find you and kill you.
That's Ray's point. He wants to discipline us.
One of the things that scares me about this movie, beyond all the ideology of it, is yes. You know, I know a lot of people that have worked on movies like this, like either directing or photography or acting. That like they know what they're making, but I know that Chuck Norris, when he made this, I bet you he was on set thinking, "This is my finest work of art."
Yeah,
like
for sure.
You know.
Yes, it's true. It's true. You know, you've mastered the martial arts when you don't have to use them at all. You use Uzis and bazookas.
Dude, those action stars are like that, though. I remember. This is like a side note, but I remember I was at a convention with William Forsythe, the character actor, was there.
Oh, word.
And he was talking about working with Steven Seagal on, I think it was Not Above the Law, Out for Justice.
Awesome.
You know, he plays the heavy opposite, Seagal. And he's like, yeah, I went into Seagal's trailer. And I was like, do you want to rehearse lines? And Seagal's like, no, I'm busy. And he's like, oh, what are you doing? And Seagal just says, I'm reading the script to my next movie. It's written by a genius. It's going to be my finest work yet.
Oh my God.
And Forsythe just says to him, well, who wrote it? Just Seagal says, I did.
Yes. Yes.
But that's how like guys like him and Norris are. Like,
absolutely
like Norris looks at this movie and it's like, this is like fine art, you know?
Well, I mean, what John Wayne also co-wrote, I think, Big Jim McLean. Am I wrong? I remember him having a writing credit on that. This is how they imagine the Ubermensch.
Which is, it's exactly the same. Like he displays zero emotion in Big Jim McLean, and he's just, you know, and
he's really mean to people.
The only thing that expresses emotion in this movie from Chuck Norris is his freaking beard.
Yeah,
that's the most evocative thing on his face.
It is fascinating. It's really
his
hard
hair
to look away from.
It's pretty good
overall.
Like when it's fluttering in the wind in the title sequence.
Yeah. He reminds me sometimes of like a bearded monkey. You know what I'm talking about? The red ones. He's got this.
Yes.
Maybe because also we see him pounce.
Yeah.
Because he's also pouncing a lot, which is something that they do. If Chuck Norris had a tail, you wouldn't think twice about it.
So that's his, like, he doesn't need a fursuit, he just needs a tail.
Probably has a tail.
I don't know.
He's been tucking it in his jeans.
Vestigial tail.
Yeah. Is that a tail in your back pocket or? All right. We got to wrap this up soon.
By the way, I wanted to say something real quick. I wanted to go back to, I don't know which one of you said it earlier, but in a weird way, it is interesting how in the 80s, the sort of communist menace threat in movies becomes more amorphous.
Yeah.
Where it's like, are they really even communists? Like the pinnacle of that is probably a movie like Die Hard, right? Where it's like they're portrayed as revolutionaries, but then it's basically implied, oh, they don't believe in any of this. They just want to make a ton of money.
Exactly. Yeah, which goes way the fuck back. I mean,
which is a theme in anti-communist films in general. Like all the ones that we've watched, it's like they're usually like European, like the communist leaders are Europeans who are like puppet mastering all these people, and then they're like, yes, but of course, when we win, we'll drink champagne, right? Know, whatever.
Yes,
like,
we'll butter our croissants, and I don't know, put mayonnaise on things that mayonnaise doesn't belong on at all. I don't know what else they do. Chortle. I guess they chortle. Guffaw.
But I guess since this was probably like, again, the major threat that Chuck Norris was seeing was like Iran and Libya, which again also shows up in like 80s movies, like Back to the Future, right? The Libyans show up.
Yeah. Yes.
Wasn't the first Delta Force about Arab terrorists or whatever too? Or
I think so. Yeah.
You don't think it's an accident that the DeLorean has to get to 88 to escape the Libyans, do you? Think about that.
All right, Fritz.
It's all connected. Yeah, this is a late night Tenapod episode. Fritz is blasted.
Oh, is that so?
He's slushed.
Interesting.
I was right. I was thinking that's another Chuck Norris movie, the Delta Force, 1986 with Lee Marvin. Yeah.
Oh, just like a year later.
Right? Yeah. It's like he probably just reused the same script.
Probably.
Yes. Well, it's so good, And now that hack Zito's not involved, and I can get who did Delta Force?
Menachem Golan actually directed it.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Man, they were just cranking them out back then. Fuck.
Damn, yeah, for real. The canon.
I mean, they knew how to crank them out.
Well, are we at the point when we can talk about how this movie ends? Because it's really the best part for me.
Okay. Yes.
So Chuck Norris finally kicks a dude. Finally, after like this whole fucking movie, which is like an hour and 45 minutes long, by the way. He hides in the dark in a room and pounces like a lion onto Rostov. They get into some hand-to-hand for a little bit and then break apart, only to find Rostov hunting for Chuck Norris with what else but a bazooka in this tight hallways of these offices here. And then Chuck Norris appears behind him with what? Another bazooka. And so they face each other down the hallway of this office building.
It's time.
And like completely rational actors decide to fire bazookas at each other in this epic duel. Rostov is blown out of the window. You see like pieces of hand and head. There's a fun little gore bit in there. A lot of slush flying out that window. And that's the end. It's a fucking RPG duel.
It is a close quarters are the best place to use like shoulder fired anti-tank weapons.
It's just like the next step up from this is just to whip your dicks out and fuck each other. Like that's really there's nothing else.
That would have been a far better ending.
This is the max you can go without going full Sparta here, This is Atlanta.
Yeah, the ending is quite ridiculous. I love that. I think the last line was just Chuck Norris after repeatedly telling the story about, and one day, you won't know when, but you're going to awaken, and then you're going to die. And then it just ends with him like saying like, what is it? He's like, it's time.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this is like the ending of Halloween 2. I mean, that wouldn't be surprised if Joseph Zito literally ripped off the ending
Sure.
where Loomis says to Michael Myers, "It's time, Michael."
Yes.
It's just like such an it's so melodramatic, you know.
I think that actually supports Ray's argument here, which is that it's Chuck Norris threatening us. This whole movie is Chuck Norris threatening us. Like, you saw what I did to these motherfuckers? Wait till you see what I do to you, Fritz. Well, okay, Fritz actually would be a guy he punches. That's a very exotic name for a Chuck Norris film. So is Boris.
Rostov is just a stand-in for the American people.
There, exactly. Yeah, we are Rostov. There's your episode title.
We are Rostov. Yeah, he is like amorphously ethnic too. Like he did not quite Russian, like Russian in name, but speaks everything. Yeah.
A little bit of Volk in him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, goddamn, what a theme we picked here today.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I hope I wasn't too like conciliatory towards the movie while talking. I like the action set pieces, but
we are so hungry for entertainment on this show. We have to slog through so much fucking horse shit that it's nice that like I don't even mind that like a talented horror director took over like a fascist propaganda film because it makes it watchable, it makes it fun and I liked it. So, I'm glad. Please be conciliatory. We'll take what we can fucking get around here. I did want to say, though, maybe one of these things that maybe come up in both these films and maybe even the comic, if I think about it. But that is, again, about these amorphous communists. We talked a bit about that. But I wanted to point out that in the 1952 film, the president, who is weirdly filmed from the back of his head, like you're in an old Catholic mass.
For no reason. It's very strange.
No fucking reason. Maybe it's part of the dream thing, but now we can say that about everything that happens, so whatever. But the president says that he's going to bomb a, quote, nation that has long been a threat to the world, but that nation isn't clearly defined. Neither are the communists, because the communists also seem to be a mix of like, I don't know, like Romance language speakers and Slavic speakers kind of mixed up. They have different, complexions. So I feel like in both of these cases, you have this idea of communism as a nation in of itself, that it's a race that's out there. There's a race of communists on the planet. They don't have to be part of a state. It doesn't matter, but what matters is they're coming, and they're coming in hordes. Very killable, fun hordes, like one-hit hordes,
I mean, if you wanted to get real weird with it, or, if you want to take it more in the Nazi direction, that does kind of make sense, because it's they're among us, they can look just like us, some of them don't, and they control a lot of things.
Yeah. They're essentially body snatchers, even in the 1947 comic. Like they kill a bunch of soldiers, take their costumes, and become them.
No, but I mean that's Jews in all fashfic. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, I feel like everything we do on this show comes back to fascism somehow. Is that our fault?
Yes, because we've broken our brains.
It's almost like we're choosing these topics. Talk to my therapist about this.
They choose us.
I was going to say, I think it's crazy how you had movies like this and Red Dawn, and I mentioned Nighthawks. Movies like this were coming out in the 80s, and then you had movies that were like really subversive coming out. Like, I like the polar opposite of this movie to me is something like Escape from New York that John Carpenter did, or even They Live. Even though I hate how right wingers have tried to take up They Live as their type of thing, but it's not. But it's like you did have really interesting subversive movies come out in the 80s, and then you just had this like Reagan America rah-rah shit, like Invasion USA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a weird period for film.
In Escape from New York, remind me, doesn't it start with like a U.S. congressman getting kidnapped? And
it's the president of the United States gets kidnapped.
It's the president.
But what's interesting about that movie is that
great film.
He gets kidnapped by like a Symbionese Liberation Army type group, right?
Right.
But really, the whole point of the movie, especially by the end of the movie, when Pliskin, says, "Well, all these people are dead. Don't you care?" And the president says, "Go fuck yourself," basically.
Yes,
the whole point of the movie is to say that the revolutionary terrorists were right the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great. I fucking love that movie. Love that movie. Although I do remember Escape from L.A. taking on that more let's say, classic Chuck Norris-y vibe, but I might be wrong. That was a 90s reboot.
Well, because that comes out like a good bit later.
I want to say 96. I mean,
yeah.
Escape from LA is like a parody of the big action genre. I mean, literally,
you're right. You're right.
He, like, punches a shark in the face.
Yes. Oh my God, you're right. I
Swimming
forgot
around
about
the globe.
that.
Yeah.
Well, that is something that I thought was missing in this movie.
I mean, we did get to see alligator wrestling in the beginning, but there was definitely there were no sharks.
Brought me back to
quicksand.
My childhood.
That's
no quicksand. Perfect trap for a bunch of commies on fucking, with their boots. Just go right through.
Indeed.
Well, you can't win them all, but Chuck Norris can. I guess that's it.
Well, all right. Well,
I was going to ask one more thing. Did he ever
please.
remake this movie? Like post 9/11, he just replaces the commies with like Middle Eastern terrorists.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Chuck's
I'm surprised he didn't do that because I feel
I'm
like
surprised
that's
he didn't do that either. Because that's like right post 9/11 is when he was doing a lot of his like pro-military, like going to Iraq and Afghanistan and meeting the troops and shit like that. It would have been perfectly easy to do this all over again, and there would have been lots of funding lined up for it and a willingness to do it because God knows they made a lot of shitty like 9/11 terrorism films in the immediate aftermath.
I see he made a 2003 American Christian film called Bells of Innocence, and and something called Dodgeball: A True Underdog Story. But that's I guess in 2004 already. So
he was doing the Christian evangelical films before Kevin Sorbo made it popular.
Looks like, man, Chuck is there. I'm telling you, just like in the movie, he shows up exactly when you need him to make a Christian evangelical film.
Yeah, I guess he was also like campaigning for like George Bush and shit back then. So.
Yeah, no, he's a terrible fucking piece of shit. Okay, well, guys,
by the way, what's your favorite Chuck Norris film? If we could do that real quick.
Oh wow, I wish we had pre-prepared this. Let me just pull up the old list here.
I mean, I know what mine is, and I have a reason for it. Way of the Dragon, 1972.
Oh my God, that one is really good, actually.
And it's good because you get to see Chuck Norris get the shit kicked out of him by Bruce Lee.
Yes, you're right.
Also, that movie features Bruce Lee beating the shit out of an actual fascist, John Derbyshire.
Nice.
The National Review author is in that movie, and he gets the shit kicked. Yeah. So it's a brilliant movie if you want to see fascists get their asses kicked.
Well, who doesn't want to see that?
I mean, otherwise it's up between like Lone Wolf McQuaid and like, which is just not good. And
yeah, but it has David Carradine.
It does. That's
the only reason to watch Chuck Norris movies. You get to see guys like David Carradine and Richard Lynch and Billy Drago.
Okay, I'm actually maybe going to go with The Octagon, but it has been a while. I have to tell you the truth. Might need to rewatch.
The Octagon is great because Chuck Norris's acting is so bad in that they had to get a different actor to do his inner monologues.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's so good. Well, I say Octagon now, but I haven't seen Bells of Innocence, his Christian evangelical release, so maybe I'll just hold off until I see that, and I'll get back to you. Bells of Innocence could be his magnum opus. We don't know.
I sense that we're gonna have to watch that at some point for a palate cleanser film after doing something heavy.
I feel heavy now, though. All right, JG, this was great. Awesome to have you on. This was a good idea.
Well, I'm glad you guys invited me.
Yeah.
And also, real quick, for any listeners that haven't listened to Parallax Views, where do they find you? And
Patreon.com/Parallax Views, and then I'm on Podbean. You can, if you just type it in on Google or your favorite podcatcher, Parallax Views, Parallax. So
hell yeah,
all right. Great show. I really like your show.
I appreciate that.
I'm really happy you've been on today, and definitely, recommend to our listeners if they haven't already checked you out to do that. And I don't know, it'd be good to have you back on to talk about something else that's not Chuck Norris related. I know you're trying not to be the Chuck Norris guy, but I don't know who else to pick is the problem. So either we got to change topics next time, or you need to find a guy who's better at Chuck Norris than you are. You can get typecasted quickly,
Yeah.
Gotta watch out.
I'm trying to avoid it.
Yeah, you're welcome back on at any time. We do film episodes like this. This is great. I love it.
Yeah,
right on.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. See you soon, I hope.
Yeah. Cheers.
Hey there, all you free people enjoying your free episodes from The Empire Never Ended. Maybe scoot on over to patreon.com/tenepod and become a patron. We publish 3 additional premium episodes there alongside the 2 freebies each month. We're on Twitter too, also at Tenepod, but our Patreon is really where it's at. See you there, maybe? Yeah?